Welcome back to our ongoing coverage of the Synod on Synodality here in Rome. Joining us now is Archbishop Anthony Fisher, the Archbishop of Sydney, and he's one of the Australian delegates here at the Synod on Synodality. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you.
So you are now an outgoing member of the Ordinary Council of the General Secretariat of the Synod. Can you share what that experience has been like when it comes to the Synod on Synodality?
Well, for one thing, it was much longer than we expected because of COVID and then the Pope deciding to make for 2 sessions of this synod. It meant we've been on that council for 6 years now, when I was expecting it to be 4 years or even less. It was an interesting experience. We met usually once a year here in Rome in person and the rest of the time by Zoom. That's one of the things that the Church has learnt from COVID, that it's possible to have meetings without having to travel across the world. But for me, that usually meant we were meeting somewhere after midnight, but usually 1 a.m. till 3 a.m., something like that, because otherwise it wouldn't work for North America and Europe.
Wow. Well, thank you for the time that you have given to the Church in that way.
Well, I'm a night owl anyway.
Your Excellency, there has been obviously much discussion both before the Synod and during the Synod about the so-called hot-button issues. Some were raised, some weren't. What has your experience been with that within the Synod Hall, to the degree that you can talk about it? And how did that meet sort of the expectations that you had and what you're hearing from others?
First thing I'd say is I think the Pope was very wise to take those hot-button issues off the table. They were such a distraction, and it meant that people were not really focusing on what he'd asked us to focus on, which is what we can learn to be a better church by being better at listening and discerning and consulting the people of God when we're making important decisions. And time and again that was sidetracked by people's particular passions and one might even say sometimes obsessions, because no matter how many times he said to leave this one alone or that one alone or that's decided or the tradition's clear, some people would keep coming back on those issues. So it was good that the Pope took them off the table. That they've now been sent to study groups and there's some mystery about exactly who's on them and how they're thinking through and where that's all going. That's left people uneasy both within the Synod and outside. And we'll have to wait and see till the middle of next year where that is all going to go. But certainly it was good that those people who wanted to keep bringing those issues back were time and again told, no, stop that. Let's focus on what the Pope's asked us to address.
And have you seen this October a greater focus on that, on the synodality, and more of a consensus?
Much greater. So this time last year, the Synod session of last year was much more tense, much more political, much more people just bringing their grievances and gripes to the Synod. This time round, we knew each other better. Those hot-button issues have been taken off the table. We could focus on the common ground we had on how, as a church, we can be better at listening to people and discerning God's will for us. So I think it was a very much better session this time round.
As you noted, Pope Francis wanted the focus to be very clearly on synodality, and one of the dimensions of that has been the question of so-called decentralization in the Church, the relationship between particular and local and universal Church, and one of the issues from that has also been the possible expansion of the authority of Episcopal conferences.
Yes.
How has that played out? Because I know it was also a topic of much conversation in the theological forums around the city.
It has been, and I think the Synod and the whole synodality movement has occasioned more reflection on this. One thing I'd say to begin with is it's not all decentralisation. It would be decentralisation if you were moving authority from Rome and the Roman Curia and the papacy itself to the local bishops' conferences. But in fact, it seems to me most of it is being moved, if it's going to happen at all, from the local bishops up to the Bishops' Conference. So it's actually centralisation, not decentralisation. It's moving it from a very disparate group to a single authority in each country. And that obviously has its complexities. For one thing, Bishops' Conferences are very diverse. I'm in a Bishops' Conference of about 40 in Australia. The Brazilians have more than 400. there are some bishops' conferences here in Europe that don't even have 4. Well, those are very different gatherings of bishops with surely quite different magisterial authority. So to just say a bishops' conference can decide what is Catholic teaching or liturgy or morality or church order in that particular country is deeply problematical. I don't think that's in fact what those who are most sensible about this really want. What they're thinking about is that different cultures do have different expressions of the faith, a different piety. I've just been at the International Eucharistic Congress in Quito, and it was beautiful, the local cultural ways of expressing their Eucharistic faith. And so it is important that we recognise different cultures and that bishops' conferences be part of that.
Just a natural follow-up to that, and I know, Matthew, you were in Quito as well, that Australia will be the host of the next International Eucharistic Congress. Can you talk about the link and the connection between Eucharistic cohesion and Eucharistic revival and synodality?
Yes. I think that there has been in this session of the Synod a lot more reflection on the sacraments of initiation, of baptism, confirmation and the Holy Eucharist, and what they all say to us about our Christian discipleship, about our cohesion as a church, our sense of communion in the sense of the sense of belonging and of sharing in one faith and one baptism, in one Lord. And so that Eucharistic aspect of synodality has been important, that it's been explored more deeply this time round. Clearly, those, for instance, who would like to see anybody that wants to come to communion, even if they're not Catholics, even if they're not baptised Christians, that we should just be welcome to everyone. They get a bit of synodality, that is the bit about wanting to be welcoming, hospitable, inclusive, but they miss the other parts of synodality, that we're part of a long tradition, 2,000 years old, and we hope going for many thousands of years into the future, that involves the whole church, not just a particular country and its particular concerns, but the universal church, and that with that comes certain beliefs, certain practices, including that if you don't believe that is Jesus Christ, whole and entire, his divinity, his humanity, if you don't believe that, we love you, we want to pray with you, but the Eucharist isn't for you till you're ready to say that. And so it's been important to sort some of those things out during the Synod.
Absolutely.
As you noted, this has been a multi-year process, and you've been here twice now for 2 different sessions for the Synod. What are your biggest takeaways? What are you wanting to bring home to your people?
Well, we're intending to have our own diocesan synod in the next 2 years in Sydney, and that will now be part of our preparations for the Eucharistic Congress to come. I would hope to see the Synod as a place where we bring people together to reflect on our mission together, to reflect how do we get people back to Mass that stopped coming during the COVID time or have stopped for some other reason. Because if we're going to get ready for Eucharistic Congress, we've got to really love the Eucharist and be very inviting and very, very intentional about getting people back to Mass, getting those who are at Mass to really understand what a beautiful thing it is, how important it is in their life. So I think a big thing that synodality says to us is, can we bring people together to take their faith more seriously and communicate better, listen to each other better, listen above all to the Holy Spirit better.
In our final minute with you, Your Excellency, I'd love to ask you just about the news of the day and this encyclical that Pope Francis released today on devotion to the Sacred Heart. Yes. I don't know if you had the chance to read it yet. It was just hours ago it was published, but any thoughts on a new encyclical on the Sacred Heart and its release here on the final week of the Synod?
Well, I think it is a very happy thing that Pope's decided to address that topic. The Sacred Heart is, of course, a great devotion of the Society of Jesus. The Jesuits have promoted that for hundreds of years now, and so he's being a good Jesuit in representing the Sacred Heart to us. The theme of mercy, of course, has been all the way through his pontificate, and so the mercy of God and the divine mercy that Pope John Paul promoted very strongly is, of course, another version of that same devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And so I'm very much looking forward to exploring all that's in the new encyclical and hopefully deepening my own devotion to the Sacred Heart.
I hope so as well. Your Excellency, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
It's great to be with you. God bless all the viewers.
Thank you so much. And earlier this month, with the Synod already underway, Pope Francis announced he was creating a new consistory of cardinals to be elevated in December. Catholic News Agency's senior Vatican correspondent Hannah Brockhouse reports with some of those names and what these appointments reflect about Pope Francis's pontificate.
Terrò un consistorio